Hello, and welcome to Conversations from the Alcove. My name is Caridad Svich. I am a playwright and also an artistic director of the Alcove New Play Development Program at the Lucille Lortel Theater in New York City. This conversation series focuses on art, life, craft, and the world. And it's usually a conversation series with theater makers, although we haven't branched out into other areas yet. We might in the future, so stay tuned. If you haven't been here before, welcome. And if you have, you know the drill a little bit, but I'll walk you through it anyway. So I'm going to start with a brief audio description of myself, and then we'll introduce our guest for today, and then we'll dive into the conversation itself. So, audio description of me. I am a fair-skinned person with mousy brown hair today. My bangs are very fluffy today. They're sitting on my forehead, very recalcitrant. They're not behaving. My hair is pulled up. Usually it's shoulder length. I have brown eyes. I'm wearing glasses that are perched on the edge of my nose. They're round, sort of tortoiseshell glasses, quite large. And I have red lipstick on my lips. I'm wearing stringy white headphones in my ears. And I'm wearing a top that's got a black background with different flowers on it. There's just flowers, butterflies. It's very kind of like nature and all those things. Behind me is a white wall, blurred out, and you might see occasionally the outline of possibly a curtain. Those are both blurred out, but it's a real location. Today's guest is Sebastián Eddowes-Vargas, who is an artist who was born and raised in Lima, Peru. Mostly a playwright. They're also a director on occasion. They're also an educator, and they're still training, but not quite complete, but still training as a dramaturg at the David Geffen School of Drama at Yale. I think almost there with the end of the degree. His work has been presented in Brazil, Canada, Colombia, Costa Rica, Ecuador, Peru, and the USA. He's written a number of plays. Among them are Hasta, Choque, Hueso with Mario Zanatta, Una Historia de Poli, Amor, El Rancho de los Niños, Perdidos, and Can The Peruvian Speak. He usually writes about queerness, migration, and coloniality. Most of his plays are comedies. We need to talk about that. It's a form that I'm really interested in, but sometimes I don't get a chance to talk to people about it because people have a disdain for comedy for some reason. I don't know where that comes from. And they've worked as a dramaturg for us at the Lortel with the playwright Mildred Lewis. And I hope they work with us in the future in other capacities. Welcome, Sebastián.
Hola, Caridad. So nice seeing you.
Yay. So for those who follow the series, I start always with the same question, which is, how is the climate crisis affecting your art practice?
So that's a big question that I've been thinking about for a couple of days. I would say, I don't know, this is what I can answer today. I probably have a different answer tomorrow. But I think that it creates a lot of uncertainty about the future, Those of us who find the present intolerable or in need for being reimagined and transformed, we rely on the idea of creating new futures, new possible futures, new worlds, because the one we have is not enough. The problem is that the climate crisis creates the sensation that that future does not necessarily exist, And so sometimes it's hard for me to find ways of thinking of new worlds and keep working if that future is maybe interrupted. So I would say that even if some things are not being felt right now for me, in my personal immediate life, this creates the notion that the future that we've been working so hard for may never arrive. So how to invest in long-term processes, which is what we need to do. I don't know. I don't have an answer, but I think about this every day.
Yes, and I think as theater makers, you're right. We sort of we write toward the future. And I think what's happening a lot now is that people are a little bit like, well, a couple of things. I think people are retreating into the past. You know, they're kind of doing a lot of nostalgic, maybe not purposeful, just a little bit more like, oh, that feels comfortable. I sort of know what that terrain is kind of work. And I think there's also shooting almost kind of like what I call a skip hop through the present to leap into a future. And you're like, well, wait a minute. We have to kind of go through what we're going through as a species, right? To sort of be able to figure some stuff out. So I think that sometimes I wonder about the leapfrog approach because I think it negates a lot of things that need to be dealt with. Or maybe this is just the eternal struggle that we're in. Do you know what I mean? Like maybe it's like, I was thinking about the atomic age, and I was thinking about like other times when, of course, it's not been as dire as it is now, but I'm thinking about like other times when it has felt perhaps, no, what are we going to do? You know, now we have a nuclear bomb. Now we have you know what I mean? And I think that artists are in positions to either retreat or to face things or to maybe, you know, think about like how sometimes the future is being sold to us. And how maybe that's maybe not investing that kind of propaganda. You know, it's made me think in those terms actually around what is the future that we sell, and I don't mean that in a crass way, but I do think it can become that way. And how do we kind of counteract that as artists? Because I think sometimes it can become like you know, be on the rise and everything will be fine. You know, so yeah. You know, to that end, I mean,
before we move to
please.
the next topic, I was
No.
just remembering also that one of my professors, who was a priest and was specialized in medieval philosophy, when we had this conversation, he said that at least for centuries, if not always, people have thought that the end of the world was around the corner, and we've always been wrong. So I keep thinking about this, about how not only the atomic bomb, like in the Middle Ages, the second coming of Jesus,
Right.
or the apocalypse. And at the same time, the other thing that I've been trying to approach to think about is, yes, we are at the end of a world. I think that's something I'm pretty convinced of. Something is changing radically, but the end of a world doesn't mean extinction necessarily. It means entering a completely new universe that we cannot really imagine right now. So maybe our job as theater makers is to keep imagining it and offer some images of possible futures, you know?
Yeah, absolutely,
Hmm.
absolutely. I mean, I wanted to segue a little bit into your. I mean, you obviously wear many hats as an artist, translator, dramaturg, director, educator, playwright. So, how do you balance all of that, and also how does the work feed into each other? So, the different things that you do, how do they kind of like nurture one another, or are you very separate about how you approach things?
I think of two answers. The first one is that paying bills is hard. So having a lot of hats makes it surprisingly easier to pay the bills. I would have never imagined when I was younger that being a dramaturg would pay the bills. I am surprised that that's what it's doing, you know? And being a playwright is beautiful, is what I love the most in this world, but at the same time it, like, I mean, I can write a play or a script really fast, but sometimes I want to spend 5 years, 10 years imagining a play. And I don't know, like, I'm working in one play right now for 5 years and it's not ready, and it's okay. I mean, I'm telling you now, it's okay. I'm frustrated as hell because I want this to be done and move on to the next thing. But you
Yeah,
know, some plays need more time,
yeah.
and not having to think about money makes the process easier. So that would be my first answer, my real world answer. The other answer, that it's a little bit more utopian, but also very real, is that I think that all of these pollinates each other, and all of it is really kind of the same. You know, like sometimes I imagine a play, and sometimes I want to write it. Sometimes I want to direct it. Sometimes I'm not a great actor, but sometimes I act. So, or sometimes what it's needed is to be a producer or a dramaturg, or just be around and give and offer notes to the artists. I think in the specific field of theater, everything is really, really connected. And it also has to do with my training in Latin America. We, the tradition I've been educated in, sees everything as not as, like, I'm looking for the right words, not as closed squares, but as a flow that keeps going. So sometimes in
Mhm.
rehearsal, when the playwright is in, an actor would start improvising or would
Right.
start saying like, "Hey, my character would not say that." I remember one day in a rehearsal that I was written a character who was a woman 20 years older than I am. So the actress was, everything is great. This does not make sense. This makes sense for you maybe, but it does not make sense for me. And I was like, tell me more. And I was taking the notes because, she knew about her experience more than I could ever know and more than I could imagine. So it's not that she was necessarily the playwright, but she was getting inside of my world as a playwright, and that would enrich both her role and my text. So everybody was happy in this specific process. I was also thinking of one of my mentors was Aristides Vargas, who is an Ecuadorian playwright, actor, and director. And he works with this group Mala Hierba. And one of the wonderful things I learned about Mala Hierba is that when everybody's on the same page, and this only works when everybody's on the same page, they develop some agreements that in certain parts of the play they can improvise. Of course, playwright in person, like present, director present, and everybody has trained about this. But what some of the most powerful moments that I've seen in their theater was when the actor realized that they were entering a very specific space, proposed something to the other actor knew what was going on, and a whole new scene would happen. Usually, since Aristides is writing, directing, and acting, this was very easy to do. But I think all of these roles feed into each other, and I truly believe in collaboration. Of course, at the end of the day, I think you need a director, you need a playwright, a person who would say yes, no, because of the unity of the show, and in order to avoid 10 hours of discussions over the color of a t-shirt. But I think that when people can develop these connections, the work enriches, it gets richer.
Yeah, absolutely. I was thinking if you, I mean, I'm sure you've come across this in your practice, but I was thinking about sometimes when you're writing, thinking specifically about the playwright kind of angle around when you're crafting a play. For example, this play that you've been writing for many, many years, and you're trying to like say, not so long to it, but you're kind of be like, please, please be done. And I think that that's an interesting thing about time and how we work through the writing process. For example, that a play is inside your body, and it's asking to be kind of articulated. And sometimes you get a glimmer of it. Sometimes it's an image. Sometimes it's there. Then you start kind of articulating it on the page in some way. Once you figure out like what it is to some degree, um, and then and then there's that process. I mean, it's funny when you said I just want to get it out of me, but it's like that it's kind of inside you, and then you're like,
Mhm.
please let me go. you know and it doesn't mean that it's finished once you hit end of play, but I do think that there's a kind of breath of relief, right, when you get to that
Mhm.
moment and you realize, that's the thing, right, that's the thing that I'm making. But there is also a luxury around time, right? Often in our industry, time is short circuited,
Mhm.
and it's kind of like interrupted, and you're told, where's the play? And sometimes you say, I'll have it to you in 3 years, and people look at you like, what do you mean by that? And so, but I'm wondering, inside of that process of just being with the work, If you've been in situations where the work has diverted a lot from your original intentions, surprised you in ways that maybe like confront you, like the work itself is confronting you instead of you confronting it. Yeah, I wonder if you've been in that situation as a playwright.
It happens most of the time. So I usually think of two different categories of plays that I write. Some are the ones that are written very fast. You know, you mentioned Hasta que Choque el Hueso, that we've translated as
Yeah.
Until Our Bones Break. Until Our Bones Break was written in 2 months. You know, we sat down, we were like, this is the issue. This is like my co-writer, Mario Zanatta, and I, this is what we want to do. So we crafted the story. It's a rom-com about two men in a marginalized city. No, sorry, marginalized neighbor of my city, Lima. So we wrote it in 2 months, and every year, every time it goes back to the stage, we check it out, we change a couple of lines, and that's it. But the play is there. The play was very fast to come out, you know, and it has not changed systematically, like not systematically. It has not changed radically since our first big reading, where we got a couple of notes, we did a couple of big changes, and then the structure has been sustained over time. Um, Now, that's a lucky play. And I say lucky in the sense that it was very fast to develop it. Right now in October, my play a Ranch for the Lost Boys is being published in M.F.A and Drama in an anthology by M.F.A and Drama. A Ranch was a nightmare.
Oh,
I mean, a beautiful nightmare, I would say, but getting it out was a nightmare. It began in a class. I was taking a playwriting class, and one of my colleagues wrote a play, and I was like, I don't like your play, and I don't like your play because I think it lacks conflict. So I'm going to do my own. Sometimes one is annoying to oneself. So I wrote a new play, like it was the same idea, but completely rewritten. It was about a 21-year-old boy. That's the character description. In this 15 minutes version, was defending his thesis, his dissertation about a Soviet movie maker. So I was writing in my house, and I was like, why does he care? Why is this so important for him? Why why is he fighting so hard for this guy? So I was like, okay, what if they met? What if they got along? What if they had a love affair? What if the love affair failed and was terrible? And what if my character came back to Peru after this love affair, defending the work of the man he was with, because he's actually defending his relationship had value. 15 minutes. It was terrible. Lots of ideas I liked, a couple of lines that I had to sacrifice, but I was really happy with. But it was terrible, 15 minutes. So I did three more versions of the 15-minute version. All of them, I wouldn't say terrible, but uninteresting. I was just not cracking it. So I did something that I hope I never have to do again. I wrote the 3 hour version of the play. I wrote everything. Everything. It began at the beginning and it ended at the end. It had 3 acts, one in Peru, one in Europe, one in Peru. I gathered a group of friends. I bought a couple of bottles of wine. And at 1 a.m., my dear friends were drunks and they were like, sorry, we're not going on. Like we've been more 3 hours reading and we are not close to the end. Like we love you. There's a lot of good materials here, but 3 hours, 1 a.m., like we need to go home. I don't blame them at all. They were right. So then I developed the 90-minute version, which was only act two. Like I had, but I needed to write act one and act three to realize they were not relevant. So I wrote act two. And then one day when we were producing it, started producing it in 2019 after like 5 times trying to produce it, and something happened. And in 2019 we were on the table. No, sorry. I was like, I don't like the ending. I don't like the ending. I rewrote the ending. I wrote it with we read it with the actors. And one of the actors turned around, looked at me, he nodded, and he was like, "You got it. Let's all go to get some sweets and come back to discuss." And I was like, "Okay, this is the end." And it is still the ending. And now it's being published. It has been rewritten. We opened it in 2019. I rewrote it for the 2021. And now I rewrote it for the publication. And I guess that's why I love theater also. I mean, changing topics. Because when you make a movie or a novel, it's usually frozen in time. When you make a play, you can say, I still like this play, but the second act doesn't work for me anymore. Let's just do it again. So I
Let's
did
do
that. I rewrote the act. I mean, it's not the act two, but like the second part of the 90-minute version. And now I'm happy with it, surprisingly, after
so
10 years.
after 10 years you're happy. This is a good thing. It's sometimes plays take that long, and I know that feeling about revisiting a work. And I was just thinking about that actually a couple of days ago. There was a play that I thought was done, just done. I was like, I'm done with that. Like it had been produced a couple of times. I was perfectly happy with it, and I was in a situation with a director who wanted to stage it. And I was like, sure, like that's cool, like do the play. And then they, in the middle of their preparation for the rehearsal process, they contacted me and said, would you be open to some changes in the script? And I was a little bit, I had that first moment where I was a little bit offended. You know what I mean? I was that moment like, what do you mean? This play's been done and it works and I know it works. And, I did all those things. And then, but I respected them obviously, and I listened in, and they said, yeah, there's this section that I think, I don't know what it's doing there. And then it moves over here and the rest is cool. But then there's this thing. And a lot of it had to do with, there was a sequence where I did a lot of backstory for one of the characters. And the writing, was very full and all these things were happening in it. And I was like, consider deleting that and maybe moving some stuff around. And I was like, maybe. And then I did the edits. We went into production with that version. And I was like, this is so much better. Why didn't I think of that a couple of productions ago? Someone would have asked me about this sequence. So I think that there's something also about like who is asking you the questions in the room of the work and how they're going about it, when you're receptive to hearing and when you're not as an artist. And I know that sometimes that space of being receptive takes more time, actually. And there's also where you are in life, right? Like where you are in life with the work, right? So that both in your life personally, but also in your relationship to that piece. I think sometimes when you write something and it's close to your, not close to your experience, but close to your viscera, right? Like you're kind of in it. You're like, you can't hear stuff about it because you're like so in it. Like you're full. And I think you sometimes need a lot of space around a play to actually be able to see it properly. Sometimes I think it's helpful for playwrights to sort of leave the room and kind of like not, which I know people are like, what do you mean? And I was like, yeah, actually, you just need time. You need to like give the thing up for a while so you can actually look at it. Because I think sometimes it's very deceptive. It's still in your head somewhere. You still have the perfect idea of how it should be. There's all these things that interfere with actually being able to look at what's in front of you. And also you have a set of artists that are working on it, and they have very specific points of view on the work too, right? So I think that it's also about understanding where they're coming from with the material and being open to that. So, but yeah, it was a really interesting lesson around also re-seeing the work. We touched on this a little bit inside of your answer, but I want to sort of go into it a little bit deeper around why theater. It's a question that always gets asked. Why are we doing this absurd thing? Yeah, but why? Wow. There are movies, there are other kinds of forms that are really fascinating, beautiful. So yeah, why this one for you?
I always joke that I'm married to theater, and every partner I've had is my lover because I'm really, it's theater is my husband. I just miss my spouse. I'm committed to him, to them, forever. Sometimes I regret that decision. Most days I don't. Most days I'm like, I'm lying. Most days I'm like, I don't know if it's the best idea, but I don't know if I could have made another. I will tell you why I chose theater because I'm from Peru. I was born in Lima, and Peru had a civil war that everybody still fights about when it started, when it ended, what happened. It's brutal how we're still fighting about this. But the Truth Commission claims, and I agree with them, that the civil war and dictatorship went from 1980 to 2000. The
Right.
reason why this discussion is still ongoing is because a lot of people who are actively responsible for crimes are still in power or pursuing power, and many other things. But let's leave it like that. I mean, I would talk about this for 6 hours, but nobody wants to hear me talk about this for 6 hours in a theater conversation. Um, so I was born in the middle of this process, somewhere in this process, and when I came of age, let's use that horrible term, when I had some lucidity about what was going on, I realized there was a lot that was going on in my country that I was not aware of because it was not being said. It was not being thought. It was not being elaborated. As if all of this conversation was still being hidden because it was a brutal conflict, like between the atrocities of the subversive groups and the atrocities of the Peruvian state, the murders, and just the fact that um, you didn't know if people that were close to you were terrorists or involved. I hate that term, but involved in terrorist acts. That's
Yeah.
a more specific way of saying this. Um, so you had to deal with the fact that this was not something happening millions of miles away. I don't know what I mean, thousands of miles away. I do metric system. I don't know what a mile is yet. But it was something that was happening in front of you. It was something that could happen at any time. So discussion about this was very difficult because it forced you to realize that some people you actually knew could be responsible, or some people you knew closely were affected by this. And so even if you were saying some, I remember one very aggressive discussion in a theater where a playwright yelled to another playwright, "You want me to make amends with the people who are responsible for these crimes? Tell this to this other playwright whose dad was murdered by these people." So everybody was right, if that makes sense. Everybody had an actual claim about, like, everybody had a point, but everybody was yelling over each other in a theater. Um, on top of this, I grew up queer. I mean, I am queer. And growing up queer in Lima in this time was basically, in Lima, in Latin America, people say, se perdona el escándalo, sorry, se perdona el pecado, pero no el escándalo. In English, you can forgive the sin, but not the scandal. So you could be queer, kinda, as long as you kept your mouth shut and you were passing, and you could pass. So when I was an adult, I was like, okay, so I'm growing up in a place in which these two big things that affect my life, the violence and queerness, are everywhere, and everybody's scared to talk about it out loud. Um, it's something that still, those two things are still an issue in my country. So it was like, how can we talk about queerness and civil war and political violence? Well, in theater, your characters can say it. Your characters can be, you don't have to be responsible for the things that your characters say, which I found beautiful when I started writing villains. So it's like you can make your villains say the most horrible things. And when people were like, but this is horrible, that's why this character is a villain. that this is a horrible character, but these things need to be said because these things are being thought. It's not that this person is crazy. People think like this. People act like this, and we need to be able to confront it in front of us. So I ended up doing theater because, damn, it was a place where you could go and say all the things that you could not say in real life and blame it on the character. Like I could publicly kiss another man and say, "Oh, it's the character. It's not me." I could write queer story. Well, there was a point where it was so obvious that I was queer that I had to come out. But there was. It is a place for me, theater, where you can say what it's not, what you cannot say outside of the stage. You can do what you cannot do outside of the stage. You can face things with the complexity that only theater or film can give you, because you're thinking in contradiction, you're thinking in process. You're not thinking as this is the truth. No, you're unfolding this truth in time and space. This, and also why theater? Because there's nothing to me more delicious in my professional life than be in a room full of strangers with everybody laughing at the same time. I'm writing about Michael R. Jackson, A Strange Loop. I won't spoil much about the musical, but the play. I think it's constructed in a way in which he welcomes the audience. The playwright welcomes the audience, and there's one line which I won't say out loud because it's very offensive, where the character says something, and the whole audience turns around the car. It's like you've created this complicity, and now you're breaking it. And now you can feel the whole theater tense because now we're dealing with uncomfortable truths, more so after laughing and singing and dancing with the main character. So I don't think any other genre can do this. I love all the genres, but like film, most people are watching it on their TVs right now in their houses. Novels, you read it on your own. TikTok, you're on your own with your phone. Dealing with the like being in community with strangers, all feeling, I mean, you don't all feel the same, but all feeling, all responding to the same thing. And then going to a moment in which, like, damn, we're all uncomfortable and we're all pissed about what just happened, but we cannot say anything because we're supposed to be quiet. That's not something I found in any other art in this specific way. So I love theater. Sadly, I love theater. I would be happy if I would love finance, but no, I
I
love theater.
know. I know. I think some of us ask that question every day. Should I have gone into another profession that might have been more lucrative and more life sustaining? Yeah, because it's obviously a profession defined by its precarity. To that end, I mean, I wonder about. I mean, there's so many things in what you were talking about. The things that cannot be said that are said on stage, the things that cannot be done that are done on stage. But there's also the question of the censor, right? So I wonder about, we know this historically, theater has in many different countries and has had a censorship quite active, like literally somebody coming in and saying, no, you actually cannot do this or say this. So in a way, yes, this theater has a freedom, but it also potentially does not. And I wonder if you've ever encountered that, or if it's something you've wrestled with in your writing about what could not be said, what could potentially be struck from the work.
So many things that you cannot say out loud, even in theater. It can be very frustrating. So I'm from Peru, as I said every 5 minutes, as my Peruvian flag behind me can prove. But I think that shapes who I am and how I think about these things. Peru, there's very little censorship. There is censorship, but there's very little censorship for one specific reason, because the gatekeeping is so wild. I should not be saying this out loud. The gatekeeping is so wild that the artistic directors are going to censor you before you get on their stage. I had a discussion with a producer I'm working in a couple of days ago. I was like, let's submit this play to this theater. And his answer, and he's right, was nobody's producing LGBTIQ plus plays right now. So it's going to be a waste of time, a waste of effort. I insisted that we still should submit it, and that was the discussion. At the end, the play was not submitted, but he's right. Theaters are not really in Peru, are not really producing LGBTIQ plus plays. It's very hard to write about political violence, and since I write about political violence and weirdness, like, I am almost blacklisted. No, I'm joking, but it's like my plays are. My mom used to ask me, "Is this a play that I can take your grandmother to?" Usually, the answer was no, but sometimes there were exceptions. But now it's the gatekeeping is wild because what's going to happen is that I may submit I may even find funding. I may even get international awards, but the theaters are not going to produce it. I've worked in a big theater in Peru. One of my plays called Monstruo de Armendáriz. That play was produced for a very specific reason. It was a very political play. It was a play about how in Peru, there's no death penalty. There's two cases of death penalty in the history of Peru. One of them was the murder of a black man in the 50s. And everything points to, like, it has never been proved, but all the evidence suggests that he was innocent. But the case was politicized and published in the press. How could we get away with it? Because it was in the 50s. If we would have done that, and everybody was very dead, you know, so we can say a lot of things that would not be we couldn't have said if we said the play in the 2000s. So that's how Latin Americans have worked through censorship for decades. Like, we cannot say this, we'll say the other thing. It's actually the same.
Mhm.
But you can say, no, we're not talking about that. We're talking about something else, and that makes it easier to be sneaky about censorship. Now, the other thing is that in Peru we have around 10, probably 8 theaters that produce shows. That's it. It's not more than that in a 30 million people country. So getting into those theaters is extremely hard. I've worked with these theaters a couple of times. They are producing more British plays than Peruvian plays right now. Um, so working with them is hard, but they have the budget. They have and if the only censorship that has happened in these theaters in terms of theater. If you raise your money, do your work in a small venue, you can say whatever you want. People may not go. If you're too blunt, people may not go, but nobody will go and say this is not allowed. There are three famous cases of censorship. One play was accused of defending terrorism, which was absurd. The minister who made that accusation had not seen the play, because if he would have seen the play, he would have realized how wrong he was. Another one presented a pedophile priest, and was the church tried to censor it with the argument that it portrayed the church in a negative light. They failed, but there was a sign on the door saying the theater does not feel represented by the opinions of the play. And the third one happened this year. With a play called Maria Maricón, which presented the protagonist, a male protagonist dressed as the Virgin Mary. It was wild. State, the church, the university, everybody went against this play done by a 21-year-old undergrad who was graduating. There was this ultra conservative group praying in Latin in the door of the theater to exorcise the theater. That happened like 3 months ago. So yes, that's what happens when you get. And the artistic director was removed from her position. It was hell. It was hell. And this happened 4 months ago, something like that. So those are the three cases of censorship in this century. There
Yeah.
are no more because we don't get because of gatekeeping.
Gatekeeping. I was thinking about, I don't know if you know this play, and if you don't, I'll send it to you. But there was a
Mhm.
play musical at the Edinburgh Fringe in 2025 called Jesus, a queer Latinx musical. I don't know if you know about this show,
Since
which
like right
is
now, yes.
yes, which is one of the co-author of that show is from Peru, and
Yeah,
it
we've worked
takes
together.
and so I was thinking about there the sort of idea of Jesus as being a kind of object of affection, not adoration, by this young man, and like that. But I kept thinking, I wonder if this is a piece that would be done in Peru. You know what I mean? I was thinking it's being done in the UK, so this is probably not something that would be done there. But I think it's a really fascinating piece and very, very funny. Speaking of comedies. So I want to a little bit touch on this. So I think that what draws you to the comedic form? It's obviously not everything has to be tragic. And why do you think it's effective?
I'd say, yeah. First of all, yes, I haven't seen Jesus, but it's made by my friend Sergio Mayolo.
Excuse me. Yeah.
Bless you,
Thank
and
you.
his partner Guido.
Guido.
Yeah, they've
Yes.
been we're close friends.
Oh, cool.
Um, and I don't think it's going to be beat in Peru because of what everything we're discussing now.
Yeah.
Comedy. There, the first there's a practical reason. Have I get bored very easily.
Oh,
I and it's a problem. It's a problem. It's a problem that I deal with, but I get bored very easily. Like I was rewatching this masterpiece that I adore, Fellini's Eight and a Half. And at the middle of the movie, I was playing Nintendo Switch while I watched the movie because that helped me concentrate. Because my brain is so all over the place that it was like doing two things at the same time helps me erase the movie completely. Um, so I have a lot of difficulties concentrating, and every now and then I have to like recur to, like right now I'm playing with the pen. It's like my way of controlling my brain and staying on track with this conversation. So comedies in for me are usually more stimulating because they rely on constant changes and have a very specific pace that supports my concentration. Because I mean, I'm not diagnosed with anything, but definitely I have an issue with the attention deficit. When my last year, when I got in of the M.F.A, when I got the security to say this, I had a conversation with all of my professors, and I told them, I'm going to be playing solitaire in your class. That means I'm listening to every word that you're saying. Let me know if you have a problem. Let me know if this
right.
bothers you, but it's not that I'm ignoring you.
Right.
And I will prove it because I'll be participating in class. It's just that my brain does not focus if I'm only doing one thing at the same time. So comedies and musicals is my lack of attention. Um, then the other thing is that I like to write about very difficult topics because that's what interests me. I write about migration. I write about political violence. Well, I don't know if this last play I'm writing, I think the play I'm writing now, it's a tragedy. And that's why it's so hard for me to finish it. But I write about difficult topics. So what I do is like, the only way I can deal with these horrendous topics is by embracing my characters and embracing the audience. So what I try to do in the plays that in some of my favorite plays, like Can The Peruvian Speak, or Hasta que Choque, Hueso, or A Ranch for the Lost Boys, is getting to the darkest place I can go to and then hug people. Like hug, like there's one scene in Can The Peruvian Speak that there's like in the final part, like it's a rom-com about two migrants in New York. So there's a moment where all their trauma, all their baggage, all their impossibility to connect explode, and it gets very uncomfortable, and I need to go there. I need to. So what happens immediately after is that the main character goes to a karaoke and sings Total Eclipse of the Heart by Bonnie Tyler, and invites the whole audience to do it. We did it at Yale Cabaret, and the whole audience just got into the stage to sing Total Eclipse of the Heart. And it was like, yes, this is we're seeing this breakup. And we're also sad. And because this breakup is not just like, oh, we have different things to do. It's like we have, there are loss, there are trauma, there's baggage, there's political violence, and that's why we cannot be together and we cannot understand each other. What do? We sing Bonnie Tyler. And it created this space where everybody was singing because everybody knew the lyrics and we were also projecting them. And it was like this moment where we were all like, yes, I've been heartbroken as well, and I'm also, like, I know what you're talking about. And that was the point. Like, how can we embrace the audience? Not only like, how can we get to those hard places and then hug people? I'm having in front of me some of my posters of my favorite plays. Like there's Between Two Knees by the 1491s, which is a comedy about genocide by an indigenous troupe. And how can you discuss genocide? By making jokes about it. I mean, I would have never thought it worked until I read it and then I saw it and then I worked with them. White Girl in Danger by Michael R. Jackson, one of my favorite musicals. It has to deal with racism and integration, and and I think it's extremely sad. Like I've seen it twice, and every time it got to the climax, I was crying nonstop. But it worked then because the protagonist went into an intergalactic chariot with two horses to look for herself. So how can you get to that wound? How can you put all the salt in the wound and then move on? And I think comedy has been very useful for that. But now I'm writing a tragedy, so wish me luck.
Oh, I know. Well, there's a lot of salt in tragedy, and there's a
Yeah.
lot of wounding. So but there's not a lot of release necessarily. It's a different kind of release in tragedy that you have, and it's and maybe it's I was just reading a play by a colleague and it had sort of one of those gut punch endings of just
Mhm.
absolutely bleak uh, and I was like, this is probably the most honest ending for this play. But I'm sure, they will get tons of notes from many people in the industry to tell them to change that ending. And I just hope they won't. I'm like, please don't change that ending. It's perfect. But, it's really just kind of like stark. Uh, and I love that about it. So, and that's a tragic play, yeah, but it's stuff I think about, in terms of how tragedy makes you sit in something and then you're just kind of sitting with it, and maybe it's about taking it with you home, and you know what I mean, and like still thinking about it and all that. And I think when tragedy works, and very few of them do these days, because I think there's some of it has to do with how staging is.
Mhm.
You know you should be horrified, you should be, you know what I mean, it should rock you, like you should be unmoored. um and that's okay, right? Like that's
Mhm.
okay. You need to be like, wake up, that's what tragedy does. um
Mhm.
but you don't get the other side of that, which comedy gives you, right? The comedy gives you the thing of like, wake up, and then you're like, well, are you okay? you know let's figure this out, right? Like tragedy says there, go out with that and see what you do with it, right? In some ways, tragedy is very, very, very confrontational in that regard. But like I said, I think very few pieces that call themselves tragedy these days are kind of not staged that way. They're staged more to kind of like pretend themselves away or something. You know, they're sort of excusing themselves to some degree. We're almost at time, but you know, I know you mentioned some of your favorite plays. I just wonder if there are other pieces you want to put in the room or other things that are inspiring you. What's inspiring you these days?
Let's think about it. So, I mean, it's not theater, but I listen a lot to Sufjan Stevens. That's my favorite album by Sufjan Stevens, The Age of Odds, is behind me. Because I was talking with a friend. My favorite kind of work is the work that is very experimental, that makes me question a lot, that pushes me to places that I don't know, but also has an emotional punch. So Sufjan Stevens, to me, I mean, I know it's not theater. I know there's an adaptation of theater of his album Illinois, um, but I still think he's like my house is full of pictures of his albums. But in theater,
Oh,
okay.
so cool.
So
I love Sophia. Sounds great.
yes. I'm a fan. I've been listening nonstop to his music for 10 years, something like that. Yes. So things that I'm looking at the playbills in front of me. So Between Two Knees by the 1491s is, to me, one of these pieces that make me rethink everything I think I know about theater. I had the privilege of working with them at Yale, and then I just followed them around. Then Michael R. Jackson, White Girl in Danger, and A Strange Loop, and Teeth. Yeah, I don't. Teeth was a little less effective for me, but it's still a great play. These plays have made me, because of what I was telling you about, like, how can you go deep in things that are so hard, but also, I don't know, but make it in a way that works to me, at least. I adored Yellowface by ooh, I have to put
David
David
Henry
Henry
Wong.
Hwang.
Yes, of
Yeah, I was
course.
like, I was like, am I changing the name? His name? No, David Henry Hwang. Yellowface is a fascinating play. Again, it makes you rethink about everything how you address race and how you stage race. And I also have, I lost you. Am I here? I lost you. I don't know if I'm still being recorded.
Yeah, I think we're back, maybe.
I think we're back.
Hopefully. So we're
So
talking about
the other
Yellowface,
playbills,
David Henry Wong's play.
Yellowface, wonderful play, and I have in front of me Top Dog Underdog by Susan Laurie Parks, my favorite play by her. And I'm giving a lot of thought. I think I'm writing for my dissertation about Skeleton Crew by Dominic Morisot, and I think about that play at least once a week. Um, and this regarding US theater. My favorite non-US author is probably the Canadian Bahdi Mouawat, author of Incendies. It's been translated as Scorched. I don't understand why he's not more
Right.
produced in the US. He's extraordinary.
Oh, I don't. It is extraordinary. Yeah. And
And
Scorched
then
really didn't. I can't, yeah.
Scorched really didn't, what you
No,
said?
I was just. It didn't really have a presence in the U.S. as a play. The film did. You know,
Hmm.
Incendies, but the play didn't, and I always wondered why it didn't happen because it's actually very producible.
Yeah.
You know,
And
I mean,
the,
when
four,
people talk
the
about the
four
size of
plays.
the, I know, right? It's like, you know, it's economic to
It's
produce. You know,
that the trilogy is Littorel, Tideline, Scorched, Forests, and Heavens. Some
right?
of my those four are some of my favorite plays, Peruvian plays, and I will promote a colleague. There's a Peruvian adaptation of Hamlet with a troupe of actors with a Down syndrome that it has just performed in Lincoln Center, and now it's going to theater for a new audience, I believe,
Yes,
in New
theater for the new
York.
audience.
Six shows, extraordinary. I'm also writing about it. I keep going to it. Such a powerful piece. I've seen it so many times. And I'm writing right now about Marina Otero. Marina Otero is an Argentinian playwright, actress, and director. Again, she does everything, living in Spain. And I'm writing about a play of her called Recordar 30 años para vivir 65 minutos, remembering 30 years to live 65 minutes, which is a satire of testimonial work, but in satirizing it's fascinating because she starts lying to your face, and it's like obvious that she's lying to your face, but she's also like very moved, and it's obvious that this is not true, but also she's doing a lot of things about genre and about truth and about what do you expect of a female actress, a female character on stage telling you about her life.
Right.
I don't know if this is a spoiler. There's a scene where she just gets naked and she just runs outside of the theater, followed by a cameraman. So I saw it in Argentina and in Peru, and you can imagine how shocked people were of an actress half naked in the middle of the street, yelling, and everybody was like, "What's going on? Can we intervene? Is this illegal? What is happening?" So the audience was shocked, and it was one of the most beautiful moments I've ever seen in theater. So
Oh,
that's what I'm in right now.
that's so cool. All of that is fabulous and fabulous and fabulous. Thank you so much for visiting us today, Sebastián. What a pleasure. Such a fan.
Mhm.
For those of you that have followed the
Thank
series
you.
before, you know, of course, for those of you that have followed the series before, you know that I say so long here officially to you, but then I say offline with our guests for a different kind of so long. But for now, thanks for coming to Conversations from the Alcove.
Thank you so much.